Be'ezras Hashem. Today's daf is Masechta Bava Metzia Daf Chaf, number 20. Okay, so we're going to start from Daf Yutes Amid Beis, just about like 5 lines from the bottom. Okay, let's make it big. So the Gemara says like this. We learned in our Mishnah that if you find a receipt that, let's say a receipt, what does the receipt say? The receipt says that the husband paid his wife his ksuba. Let's say she's divorced. So, and once he pays the ksuba, she writes him a receipt that she received the ksuba money and gives it back to the husband. Let's say you find that receipt on the floor, you return it to the husband. You return it to the husband. So let's see. The Brisa says, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Matzah Shoiver. If you find a receipt on the floor, really, the husband should hold on to it. Why is it on the floor? If the woman agrees that her ex-husband paid the ksuba yachzed lebal, then return the receipt to the husband. But if the woman says, hey, wait a second, I didn't write that receipt, or I wrote the receipt, but I didn't get the money from the husband. You don't return it to anybody. You don't give the receipt to the wife, and you don't give it to the husband. Says the Gemara. Bizman she'isha moida mias. When I get ovend, once the woman is moida that she lost that the husband paid the ksuba yachzed lebal, then you return the receipt to the husband. Now we've been learning all this time that not everything should be returned. Although there's a mitzvah shavas aveda, you could, when it comes to certain documents, let's say you find a get on the floor, you don't return it because it could cause more damage than the mitzvah. Okay, in certain loan documents, you also don't return. So, but here we're seeing that if you find the receipt on the floor, then you return it to the husband if the wife agrees. If the wife agrees that the husband did indeed pay the ksuba. So the Gemara asks a question. Leichish, let us be concerned. Dilma kasra litim benisim v'linosna atishrei. Let's say this receipt says that the husband paid the ksuba money in Nisan, but really, in actuality, what happened? He paid the ksuba money in Tishrei. Says the Gemara. And in the meantime, and what she did was, she between Nisan and Tishrei, she sold her ksuba on the option market. Okay, she sold it to a third party that the right, like you sell life insurance policies, so she sold it to somebody else. And then she received money also in Tishrei from her husband, so she got double dipped over here. Now, so the guy that she sold it to wants to come to collect the ksuba money because the ksuba money belongs to him. He bought it, right? But he's going to return and he's going to pull out. The husband going to say, "I pulled out a receipt that I paid my wife in Nisan. So therefore, I don't owe you anything." And the husband is going to hold back from paying the land that was designated for the ksuba, like it did, right? Because really, the husband, once she sold the ksuba, the husband should have only paid the purchaser of that right, and instead, the husband paid the woman, and really, he only paid her in Tishrei. But the receipt says he paid her in Nisan. So she sold it in Iyar, let's say. So she sold it after getting paid, and the purchaser bought nothing. But really, the purchaser bought everything because he actually indeed purchased it before he actually paid the ksuba. So a whole mess up can happen. So why do you return these receipts to a woman who agrees that the receipt dropped from her husband and she received? A whole mess up can happen. Rava said, Shma mina, we go to the top of Amar Aleph, Isel de Shmuel, that we hold of what Shmuel said. Shmuel said this unbelievable chiddush. The Amar Shmuel said, let's say you're a lender and somebody owes you money and you sold the right for the loan to somebody else. He sold a loan document to his friend. And then he went and said to the borrower, you don't have to pay me. He forgave the borrower on the loan, but he sold the loan document. It's indeed a good mechila. Even his inheritor could forgive. In other words, it's the lender's son, after the lender deceased, could forgive the whole forgive the whole debt, even after it was sold. So this is what's going to happen over here. Really, the guy bought nothing, because what's going to happen is she sold her ksuba to somebody, right? But she sold the ksuba, but she still has the right to say, "Oh, my husband doesn't have to pay, even after you sell it," and that's a big chiddush. And so, therefore, that's how this whole thing works. That really no damage can happen, because we hold that you technically she could have said. So, if she sold it in Iyar, right, and then she forgave the husband in Tishrei, it's a good forgiven, and therefore he bought nothing. That's why nothing wrong. I mean, nothing technically against the law is going to happen if you return the receipt to the husband. Abaye says, I feel late tamer lace in the shmuel. Even if you say you don't hold of shmuel, shmuel is a big chiddush, because once you sell a loan document, what gives you the right to mess the whole thing up by the five? So what are you going to say? Here we're talking about over here that we're talking about that that she's holding on to the ksuba, so we know it. She didn't sell it, because she says, here's the ksuba. So therefore, you can return the receipt to the husband, because obviously she didn't sell the ksuba to somebody else. Because if she sold the ksuba to somebody else, that person should be holding on to the ksuba. The Rava says, Rava didn't like that teretz. If she pulls out a shtar ksuba, still Chayshinan, I'll always be concerned the shtei ksubas, that there's two ksubas. In other words, maybe they wrote two ksubas of the same document, and that could happen. You know, if somebody loses a ksuba, you write another ksuba, and then she found the original ksuba, so now she has two ksubas, and she sold one of the ksubas. She sold the ksuba to this purchaser. So therefore, it doesn't help us if she pulls out the ksuba. Doesn't validate doesn't eradicate the possibility that she sold her ksuba to somebody else. Abaye says disagrees to with Rava just said. I'm never concerned about somebody writing two ksubas. It's not common. Another factor over here is really if the receipt was written in Nisan, which indeed it was, because that's the date on it. Bismanai tarif. That's when we consider it as if it paid, even though in actuality the husband only paid in Tishrei. But the fact is that the date of the ksuba, of the receipt says it was paid in Nisan. And Abaye Tameh, Abaye holds, or what Abaye goes according to his opinion. The Oma Eidav Chasumen Zachenloi, Eidav, the witnesses, with their by signing on a document, they acquire the merit on the behalf of the husband. So basically, what is being said over here is that the husband, even though he didn't pay until Tishrei, but we consider it as if he paid the woman in Nisan. So then she had no right to sell the ksuba in Iyar, because we consider it as if the husband paid it in Nisan, because that's when the document was written. And Abaye has this opinion that once the document is written and it's beneficial for somebody else, the Eidim could have the right to make the acquisition on behalf of the beneficiary. So here the beneficiary is the husband, and it's almost as if the document states that he actually paid the ksuba in Nisan. So that leaves this sugya of returning a receipt to a husband that dropped it when the wife agrees that the ksuba was paid. Now a new Mishnah. Mishnah discusses other documents that you do return. Till now we've discussed documents that you don't return. Now the Mishnah says, Matzah, if you find on the floor, Igrei Shum, a document that says, that gives, it's basically the document that gives the right to the lender to now appraise any of the assets of his borrower and just take it, right? What's it called? The marshals. It's the marshals. So they have now the right, because if you find that, you return it to the lender. The Igris Mazain, if you find a letter that gives a right to a woman to collect for food that's coming to her. Let's say she married a second marriage, and the second husband committed to giving her food and her daughter food, and to make him pay, the Bezdin gave her a right to walk into his property and sell a property if he's not around, and use the money for her food. Let's say you find star a chalitza. If you find a chalitza star, a woman who received the chalitza, if you find a star is permitted to marry after receiving that chalitza, if you find it on the floor, you could return it to the woman. Unin, if you find a document of miyun. What's a document of miyun? A document of miyun is, let's say, in Chachamim Masakin, that a girl who lost her father, that her brother or mother can marry her off. Let's say she's 8 years old, bidrabanan, to somebody else. The reason why they did it, to prevent this girl from being promiscuous. And so now she's married, she has a husband to take care of her. But if she doesn't like this husband, she doesn't need to get from that husband. She could just say to the husband, miyun, I'm out of here. I don't like you. And then we write up a document, which she has to say this in front of 3 people, according to Rashi. And then we write up a document that she is permitted to marry anybody she wants to, even though she doesn't have a technical get. But if you find it on the floor, you can return it to the girl, because nothing bad can happen. Because once these documents are written in Bezdin, and Bezdin doesn't write something and regret writing it and change its mind. You see, other documents are sometimes written, but the person didn't act out of what he wrote. But Bezdin, when they do something, it's 100%. Therefore, if you find it on the floor, you can return it to its rightful owner. V'shitrei beirurim. We're going to discuss what shitrei beirurim is in the Gemara. V'chol ma'aseh bezdin. Anything that comes from a bezdin, a document that's originated from a bezdin, from a court, right? It's not a personal document. Hareza yachzer, you return it to the recipient. Now that was certain documents that you find, you can return it. What happens? Matzah b'chafisa b'dluskama. Let's say you find it in a jug or a container. You find documents in a jug or a container. So then you have a siman. The guy can give you a siman and say, hey, that you found my documents and it was in such and such a container. Let's say you find a tachrish shel ashtaris or agudah shel ashtaris. Let's say you find a rolled up shtaris. You have it rolled up, and I'm going to explain to you what it is. If a person takes, let's say, 3 documents and rolls one of them, and before he finishes rolling the first one, he starts rolling the second one. And then when he finishes the second one, right at the edge of it, he rolls the third one. That's called a tachrish shel shtaris, a rolled up group of shtaris, which is the unusual way of wrapping up shtaris. Usually you just wrap it up like a diploma, and each one's individually. But he did 3 at a time. Or yagudah shel shtaris, or you took a bunch of, let's say, 3 shtaris, one on top of another, and then rolled it into one roll. All these things are the unusual way of keeping shtaris. And if the guy who claims it was lost from him gives you this siman and proves that it was lost from him, you do return it to that person. The kama agudah shel shtaris, what is called a group of shtaris, shloisha kshurim zeh b'zeh. You have 3 of them tied one to another. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, let's say you find 3 shtaris, but echad haloiva mishloisha. It's one borrower who borrowed from 3 different people. So then it's the same borrower, but different lenders. Yachzer laloiva, you return it to the lender, to the borrower. Why? Because it's obviously him. It's all 3 of them have his name on it. And it must be that he borrowed from 3 different people, paid back, and they gave him back the loan document. And that's his proof that he paid it back. Shloisha haloivim in echav, you have 3 different borrowers from one lender, then it's one lender that owned these shtaris. So yachsel malba, then you can return it to the malba even without a siman, because it's obviously, why are these things together? It must be, it belongs to that one person, the lender. Now the Gemara's Mishnah says, "Motza shtar bein shtaraisav ve'ein yudai ma'ativoy." If you find a shtar, and it's not you, but it says that Reuven lent Shimon, and you found it in your shtaris, and you don't know, why did they deposit it? Why did they deposit something like you? Maybe the loiva put it by you, or the malva put it by you. Maybe some of it is paid. You don't know. Why does this end up in your documents? Then leave it by you. Don't return it to the lender. Don't return it to the borrower. It's just, I don't know how it ended up by you. Maybe the borrower trusted you. Maybe the lender trusted you. So don't return it and leave it to you, and Eliyahu will decide who it really belongs to. Now, let's say you find a document that you lent somebody money, but you find the receipt that the guy paid you. Now could be, why is the receipt doing by you? The receipt should be doing by the borrower, the one you lent the money to. Perhaps you were supposed to give the receipt to the borrower, and you didn't give the receipt to the borrower. or you forgot to give him, but he actually paid the loan, or maybe he did not. You just had that receipt on you, just in case that he pays you, and you don't have time to write a receipt. You just wanted it prepared. So should you collect from this document? If it has a receipt, you consider it as a collected loan and don't recollect on it. That's it. You have the receipt connected to the document, even though the receipt doesn't really belong by you, it belongs by your borrower. Still, don't collect on this loan. So the Gemara asks the question: "My shitrei berurim, what is called a shtar berur?" That the Mishnah says, if you find such a document on the floor, you could return it. Hacha tergimoi in here means in Bava, they translated as shitrei tanasa. This is like the stenographer that at a court writes down precisely what each one says, so they can't change their mind. So it's just a recording of what's taking place in the courtroom. So then you could return it. There's nothing, if it's just a regular document that just proves what people actually said. Rabbi Yirmiyah zer bar loy echad v'zer bar loy echad. Shteri berurin is if you have two people who are suing each other, or basically they're going to court, and they want so each one will choose one dayan, and then both two dayanim will choose the third one. So each one chose, and then you write a shtar birur saying that we were chosen to be the mediator or the judges of this case, and the litigants have no right to pick other judges. So that's a shtar birurim. If you find it on the floor, you could return it to its rightful owner. If you find something originating from court, you're allowed to return it. Says the Gemara. Again, here you have a get that was found on the floor in the court of Rav Huna. It was written in the get that the get, Ruvain divorced his wife Rachel, let's say, and where did Ruvain live? In Shviri Masa, which is on Rachas Nahara, in a place called Shviri Masa, which is next to Rachas the river. Amar Rav Huna said, we go to Chafam Abeit, Chashinin, we are concerned, L'shnei Shviri. We say maybe there's another shvire over here, even though this Reuven says, "Oh, I dropped it," or this Rachel says it was dropped from me. Don't return it. Maybe it's not their get. Maybe there's another dimension called another shviri somewhere else, and over there, even though we're not sure, but maybe there's a Reuven divorcing Rachel over there. So this is not the get of the person that claims it's his or hers. Amalei Rav Chisda was a student of Rav Huna, said to Rabba, "Puk ayin." Go examine this psak of Rav Huna. Rav Huna is going to ask you if he paskin correctly. So Rabba went out and said that it's incorrect. It's time we learned in the Mishnah. If you find something in the court of Bezdin, so then you could return it over there. As long as you don't know for certain that there's another place of Shviri which has two people with the same name, you could return it to the person that claims it's his. He probably dropped it in the courtroom. Amalei Rab Abba, so Amram said to Rabba, you're trying to come to an answer from our Mishnah, because it says if you find something in Bezin, you return it. But our Mishnah is Baba Metzia, which talks about Dinei Mamanis, civil cases, and you want to bring that to something that deals with Isser, Eisers, V'ish. How could you connect that? So that's what Rav Amram said to Rabba. So your proof from this mission is not a good answer. Amalei, so Rabba said to Rav Amram, Trada, you are a fool, because Shitri Chalisa Minantanan. If you look closely at our Mishnah is also talking about marriage cases, because the Mishnah says if you find a Chalitza document or Miyun document. So anyway, so it seems like a very harsh interchange between Rabba and Rav Amram. It says the Gemara, a fascinating thing. Paka Arza de Beirav, the pole of the yeshiva came dislocated. It looked like a dangerous that the shul is going to fall down. So Mar Amar, let's say Rabba said Mishum Latai Didi Paka. The reason why it was dislocated it's a sign from Shemayim that Shemayim was angry at Rav Amram who asked this question. And it really insulted me in the Beis Medrash. And Mar Amma, but Rab Amram said, Mishum Latai Didid Paka. It's for my honor this happened, because when you called me a fool, so in Shemayim, they wanted to make a message that you shouldn't be calling me a fool. Okay, so that's a fascinating thing how they interpreted events that happen just by natural causes. It's almost as if Hashem is talking. Says the Gemara, Matzah b'chafisa b'dluskaba. If you find a document in a jar or container, my chafisa, amarabba babachana chamas katana. A small jar is called a chafisa. My dluskama, it's a container. Amarabba bashmu tlika desavi. Old men have a container for their items, so that's called a dluskama. So if you find it there, you have it and bring a siman, then it's yours. Tachor shel shtaris, a guda shel taris, tanam bara. Kama hu tachor shel shtaris. What is called a tachor shel shtaris? Shloisha kruchen zebazeh. As I explained, that if you find 3 shtaris rolled up, one rolled, and by the time the first one is finished, you roll the second one. That's called kruchen, tachor. Kama yaguda shel shtaris. What's called aguda shel shtaris? Shloisha kshum zebazeh. You have 3 of them tied together. So the Gemara originally understood, before I explained it, that what's the siman over here? It's the way they're tied together. Shramet minah kasher siman. That the knot itself could be a good sign, because some people make a knot this way, or some people make a knot another way, and so therefore, this was a question in the Gemara: can a knot be a siman? Just a way you make a knot, can that be a siman? So this proves it that it is a siman, because the Gemara understood that what's the guy giving a siman to prove that it's his? He's saying that it was knotted in such a way. Answers the Gemara, that's not the correct answer. The siman is the way it's rolled up. If it was rolled one after another. So if that's what kruchen is, that's called tachrich. So the Gemara says, no, tachrich kol chad v'chad b'roisha dechavre, aguda durame adade kruches. As I explained, tachrich means you roll one, and then you start rolling the second one, and then you start rolling the third one. Aguda means you put all 3 of them piled up on each other, and then you make one roll out of them. So therefore, that is the siman. You're saying that this was rolled. They were wrapped together. You have 3, instead of a normal star, which is individually wrapped, we had wrappings of a few stars. So my machris, how do you make the announcement that you found something? Minyan. So you say, I found 3. I found 3 stars. But if my area tlasa, I feel a treinami. What's the difference? If they're wrapped up, you should announce. Why does the Mishnah say that 3 is the announcement? The Mishnah should say even 2 should be the announcement. That you found 2 stars. Ella k'da amar Avhina. No, you say tiva machres. Hachaname shtari machres. All you say is I found a star, and the guy who comes to claim it's his has to say how many stars were there and how were they wrapped together. And therefore, only 3. But 2, once you say you found stars, everybody knows you found stars, because the minimum of the word stars is 2. So it has to be 3 and above, and only 3 and above. And he comes and gives you the way it was wrapped up, then we will believe him. One more, then we will believe him and return him back as stars. One more piece of Gemara, and then we'll stop. One more minute. You return, if you have one borrower, you return it to the loiva. The isal kedaichtich the malvininu. If you're going to think that all these return it to the lender, my boy gabay hadodi. There are 3 different loans. What are they doing all together? So there must be, they belong to the one person whose name is on all 3 documents, which is the borrower, and he paid up these loans. Says the Gemara, Dilma likiyuminhi azle. Maybe the reason why they came together by happenstance is because they were all being ratified by a bezdin. So it so happened that it fell, on their way to court to get this legalized and kashered. That's how you have one borrower with 3 different lenders. But really, they were on their way to bezdin all at the same time to ratify their star. But really, the borrower never paid the loan. And says the Gemara de Mekaima, you found already ratified staras. So each lender should have taken it home to his own house. Why are they all together? So it must be it all belongs to the borrower. Says the Gemara, Dilma midei sefer nafra. Maybe it fell from the scribe. And says the Gemara, Leimasha ishak yume b'dei sefer. Once a document is finished, no one leaves it by the scribe. He brings it home. So really, if this loan was not paid, every lender should have held on to the document. The fact that they're all here, it must be that they fell from the borrower, and the borrower actually paid all these loans, and the lenders returned to him his loan document, and they just fell from him. So you return it to the borrower. But if you find three lenders one lender with three different borrowers, return it to the lender. Because if you want to return it to the borrowers, what are they doing right next to each other? They should be in the three different places because you have three different borrowers. Says the Gemara, Dilma lemichteve azli. Maybe they were going to be written all together at the same time, and that's why. So it's really return it to the borrower. And so the Gemara, the ksiva betlas yedei safrei, was written with three different handwritings from different seifrim. So again, what are they doing all together? One lender, three different people. So it must be it belongs to the lender. The dilma likiyumi azli. Maybe each lender was going at the same time. The borrower was going to be mekayim the shtar. Each borrower was coming to ratify the shtar. So the Gemara says malva mekayim b'shtara. It's only the lender ratifies the shtar. Loiva loy mekayim b'shtara. The loiva, the borrower, does not be mekayim the shtar. So again, what he basically just said, that if you find three shtaris, and the common theme of those three shtaris is they have one name the same. It's the borrower is all the same, then return it to the borrower. If it's the lender, all the same, then return it to the lender. That was the chiddush of Rab Shimon ben Gamliel. Okay, we're going to turn tomorrow for Daf Chaf Aleph and start the next parak, Eli Metzias. Okay.